purpose came when I found ways of being in service. And that did not come from acting or producing, or it actually came through my meditation practice and my tea service. I do a tea meditation um, that comes from Taoist lineages, and even though it's been synchronized in this day and age by my teacher Buddha, founder of Global Tea Hut, it's a meditation and a practice that is supported by centuries behind of stillness and just a very simple concept, which is like, today I'll sit in silence and I'll be reverent to this cup of tea and I'll try to make the best cup of tea I can. And somehow this is like, it's a mirror of where you are, you know, that moment in time, and a reflection of how you want to live that day.
Hi, I'm Lorne Rubis, the host of Culture Talks, where we engage next-gen leaders who are taking on the world's toughest problems, how they're doing it, and why they're working on it. And also a little bit around how they're committing to making better places to both work and live. And today, I am so delighted to have on as our guest the wonderful, remarkable Mia Maestro, who is, well, if you know anything about the world that she lives in, she is literally world-renowned actress, singer, entertainer, tea poet. She's she's been in over 60 films, whether it's an angle from her Argentinian background, her time in Berlin, hanging out in Toronto, or of course in LA. She's been in over 40 TV series, a couple of albums that she's launched with her music career, and now she's creating and producing at the same time. There's too much there. Go to Wikipedia. Before I take a breath and let you and give you a chance to react here. I did look you up with my favorite chatbot, and my prompt was 3 things we should know about you, and one was your unbelievable multilingual background. Like, you speak Italian, obviously Spanish, English, and German, but also your musicality. Because I think there's something about in all your background that where you talk about how being a singer composer brings a uniqueness to your acting. And then of course all the notable roles that you've had, and hanging out with Guillermo del Toro or your friend Salma Hayek, or you name all. And I could name drop forever. But I know you as a tea poet as well.
I don't know about that, Lauren, but thank you. No.
And I took that out of one of your articles that I read in Cosmo or something like that. But yeah, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's as always, it's just so wonderful just to spend time with you and converse and talk. And it's one of my favorite things to do in the past year or so since we met. But thank
Yeah.
you for that resume. It's a little reminder that sometimes internet is not super accurate and things are quite inflated. I've done many films, but not 60, and I've done a lot of TV shows, but mainly the episodes. And yes, I've had a really blessed career as an actor, working with wonderful directors, and yeah, and now as the years pass by, sharing that capacity of storytelling, also in different forms, and tea is a meditation practice for me. So I'm not a tea poet, but I wish I would be.
Well, I want to come back to the to the tea meditation, because we're gonna a little bit of a different angle here, because there's so many other vehicles and venues to talk about the entertainment side. The way we really met is that we're both fortunate to be mentors in a group called the Unreasonable Group that hosts about, I don't know, 400 or so unbelievable fellows and founders and CEOs worldwide. And there are about, I think, 1,000 of us worldwide that are really invited to be mentors. And you and I, we were bus seatmates from New York to the Catskills, and we had a chance to just talk about things. I mean, so I want to dig into your perspective around what you've observed around working with these founders
Yeah.
and just your observations there. Because what we're trying to do here with our audience is to inspire them into action, into informed action through the conversations we have, the observations that you and I have, and with the various conversations on this podcast. But I'd be remiss without just starting out by asking you and telling you how sorry we are about what you just went through on the LA fires. And do you mind if we just park there for a second? How did you do through that? And just
Mm.
what feelings have gone through you through that experience that you've just gone through?
Well, I'm in LA at the moment. Los Angeles has been my home since the 2000s, so I've been, here my whole adult life. It's a city that I adore, that has given me so much. And it happened that I was in Argentina, where I was born and where my parents live for the holidays. So I got to be away while my house was evacuated and many of my friends' homes were evacuated. Many of my friends have lost their homes. I actually, there's been so many that I have to keep a list of remembering who actually lost their homes. I would say I know 25 people that have lost their places and 10 close friends that, just everything has been burned to ashes. So it was really tough for me to be far away from LA at that time. And but also it was just remarkably beautiful to come back. The city feels really strong. There's a lot of tenderness. There's a lot of connection between people, a lot of more, good mornings in the morning while you walk to get your coffee. I think there's this beautiful thing that happens after a city has gone through a tragedy like this. I don't know how we're going to rebuild. It's such a huge event that I don't think, a city has gone through a fire like this in the past centuries, unless we go to historical fires. So, and also there's been like a lot of unknowns and a lot of just not knowing how to continue, and a lot of lack of leadership as well in terms of what's happening with our water. Why are all the soot from the fires are just flowing straight into the ocean, and nobody's filtering that, with heavy chemicals and heavy metals, and it's 2025.
Yeah,
And to and I think, going back to one of your first questions, I think this is why I like to be part of the Unreasonable group, which Unreasonable is, an organization that really, really celebrates and, supports entrepreneurs that are trying and doing their best to really change our world with the most incredible technologies, just bringing our planet forward.
right.
And so, of course, when Daniel Epstein invited me to join the mentorship, I was shy at the beginning. I was like, I don't know what I can actually give to this incredible, business people. I'm an artist. I'm a meditator. I know a lot about my industry, which is, the film industry, but I was just excited to be in the company of this community that is doing so much just to, you know, just bring health to our planet and just find like different resources and way of doing things. I often think that, sometimes our design stories and the way we've designed things over centuries or decades, they're just this bad marriages where we just got married with a bad idea and we just continue like perpetrating those ideas. I often think like, do cars need to look like this, or do houses actually need to be, designed like this, or chairs? We all know that they're not good for our bodies the way they're designed. Like, it's clearly a 16th century invention. And Unreasonable is the kind of organization that is going against that and just changing our ways of thinking. So what an honor to be part of that community and to meet people like you, Lorne, to be part of a community that supports their fellows and mentors for life.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I'm into long forms in everything.
yeah,
My tea practice, my meditation practice is a long form. I I'm into long form friendships. I'm into long form, like, there's a moment in time where you're old enough that you're like, anything that's coming into my life, I want it to be for life. And Unreasonable does that. And in this kind of sad culture that we live in, where like things are very disposable, how wonderful to be in a community that has the commitment for, the rest of the time that we're here in this planet.
Yeah, I love the long form concept. I want to come back to that, but a bridge to that, Mia, is I want to talk about your observation around the importance of purpose and why. And when you observe, like we hung out with these founders and CEOs for a few days, 3 or 4 days, but you've been navigating purpose and passion your whole life. Talk about what you've observed around the vital part of clarity of purpose and just how
Mm.
you think about it and how you help guide CEOs and founders around that thought.
I think purpose is something that in my own life story, it took me a while to discover, what was my purpose and how I actually wanted to structure my life. And I think every person has a different map of, how they need to structure their life in terms of having purpose. And for me, is being guided by the heart. It's really hard for me, and I'm very bad at just working or doing jobs that I don't believe in or that my heart is not included. Yet at the same time, you have to pay bills and pay mortgages and put gas in your car, or put electricity in your car. But so to me, just purpose came when I found ways of being in service, and that did not come from acting or producing, or it actually came through my meditation practice and my tea service. I do a tea meditation that comes from Taoist lineages, and even though it's been synchronized in this day and age by my teacher Buddha, founder of Global Tea Hut, it's a meditation and a practice that is supported by centuries behind of stillness and just a very simple concept, which is like, today I'll sit in silence and I'll be reverent to this cup of tea and I'll try to make the best cup of tea I can. And somehow this is like, it's a mirror of where you are, you know, that moment in time, and a reflection of how you want to live that day. This meditation, for some reason, I always find like it has a life on her own, on its own. And a lot of friends over the years have always asked me to share it. And I ended up working with Healing Dialogue and Action, which is a wonderful nonprofit in Los Angeles that works with incarcerated communities. And I started working with them in 2018, just donating my time and going in with them to level 4 prisons and later to juvenile halls, and just doing tea sits with the incarcerated community from yeah. That changed my life completely in a way, just to have like a moment of my time and schedule where I was just doing service for our communities, just trying to, in a very simple way, just like give my time, and also learning from those communities so much. So purpose is, it's something I feel like we need to make space to be tuned in. It's something that we need to, for me, just to be receptive to. It's sometimes it's like a subtle energy. So sometimes we need just to be in a quiet space just to attune to what that real purpose is. But for me, it just comes to just having like a 50-50, um, you know, way of life, in a way where like I work 50% of my time for profit and just to make a living, and then I donate 50% of my time into either nonprofits or or helping other friends. And that has been like a wonderful kind of like understanding of where my purpose is, and
Yeah.
then beautifully, as the more you do it, those two things start intertwining and kind of dancing with each other. Once you find that purpose, things just get into this very beautiful flow. And I'm sure you're aware of that, Lauren, where like it's just this dance where like I don't know what, sometimes when I'm working for profit, and I don't know when I'm
Yeah,
just donating my time. It's just like this beautiful, the lines really blur.
they do.
And
Choreography, it sort of, it just emerges out of that blend. And I think when you ask, you and I were kicking around what you bring to the table around these mentors or to these fellows and the CEOs, a lot of times, and this is for our audience here, many of them who are in that role. And a lot of times when we ask them, Mia, what their purpose is, they're really good describing their business model. Everybody knows what they do. Obviously, they're getting money. They're trying to scale, but sometimes they struggle as to really the underlying deep why around their
mm,
purpose. And it's important when we encourage them to discover that, because it is that underlying deep flow that everybody needs to align to. And why your those simple words that you and phrase in service is essentially the essence of finding that purpose. It's when you find what you really are in service to. And that is hard work. It's hard to discover it. It's much easier
yeah,
to talk about what you do every day.
I know.
Talk about the film industry, or you can talk, people, but it's why do you do what you do? Why, when you get up in the morning, what drives you, why do you leap out of bed in the morning? And that is the essence for us personally, but also for the organizations when we're trying to do something remarkable or unreasonable or change the world for the better. So your ability to bring that insight to help people, because it does require stillness,
Yeah.
and it's hard to require stillness. Tell me about a story that struck you. Take me to, if you could, to one of those incarcerated settings. Now you're doing this tea service. I mean, holy cow. I mean, that's not exactly the main, that's not the mainstream experience for a lot of incarcerated people, this tea service. Now, can you share a story about, what struck you, or a moment in time where you went, holy mackerel, this is having an impact?
Lorne, there's just so many stories, times after those sits and meditations, I often ask myself, how am I going to interact with the real world after having had such a profound experience, within this incarcerated walls? I think the most striking thing is the level of just wisdom and the amount of gift that many of those people have to give to society, and probably, are the only people that really know how to actually, how the incarcerated community and how our prison system in the United States could actually change, because they're so embedded in it, and they see the issues and they see the problems, and it's just really hard to understand that those people are not often given the opportunity to be part of, some people, they cannot even vote, when they come out of prison.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, but for me, I think, you said something about like the stillness and how hard it is, especially if people are, just bringing a company to life, and in the everyday fight of like, like raising money, and like, and having their new, all their employees and stuff, and like how hard it is when you have to put so much energy to bring things to life, to find that stillness. And when you hold those circles in prison, sometimes those people, all they have is just stillness. So at times, especially with lifers, you feel like you're in the company of sages, of people that have been working with their life stories and compassion and empathy for decades, that they know they may never come out and see see the world again. When we do the circles in juvenile halls, there's also, it's a very different energy, because those kids are really wanting to get out and just fight it. And a lot of the laws here in California have changed lately, so those kids now are giving an opportunity to
Right.
just go out instead of going to life in prison, hopefully, if that doesn't change with this new administration. So many stories, but specifically, I think it's like that, how many assets those people have, and how they're not integrated to communities at all. And also like how, again, going back to what we are saying about design and this bad marriage of things, like the prison, facilities and system is something that's coming from actual medieval times, you know? So how come it's 2025 and we haven't found a way of actually reinventing ourselves with that? Of course, there's many economic reasons. There's it's a business, sadly, for a lot of people, especially since the 80s, and now with this new administration, it's a business again, with with federal private prisons in the United States. Um, so yeah, every time I come out, I feel forever changed, and every issues I may have, every worries that are keeping me at night, I feel so much gratitude for my life and for being able to have a practice, for being able to give, for being able to just be in silence with a group of people I don't know, some I see every week, some I don't, I meet um, that same sit. Sometimes for months I cannot go in because I'm working or, filming. Uh, but it's just remarkable, and at times, like, when you talk to people and they're like having issues with their life, with their business, the first thing that I always offer is like, just get out of whatever you're in and do some service work, whatever it is, even if it's like an hour or 2 hours. It'll give you such a perspective on whatever problems you have, right? Something as simple and as that. And somehow it's not totally incorporated in the way we live in our contemporary cities. In some other places in the world, it's a little bit more incorporated, but not here in the States.
A lot
Sorry,
of,
that was a long answer.
a lot of wisdom behind that, just taking a moment to step out and be in service, which takes you back. So if you're in the middle of a really gnarly problem, just that stepping out, being in service, letting go, kind of becomes a path, because it's kind of like what's in the way is the way, right?
Yeah.
So, I want to talk a little bit about, we try to encourage these entrepreneurs and CEOs to really be clear about their values, what they really deeply believe in. If I were to, and I say this in the most wonderful, I mean this in the most wonderful way, if we were going to do an autopsy on Mia, what values would tumble out? Who are you? Like, what do you stand for? I know we know some things about your deep commitment to service to others, but what are your what are your values, and how would you help
Mm.
me as a CEO better define the values that are deeply important to my company?
Think for me, and these are all values, working values, as you say, like I'm in service, I feel like I don't do any, like I do so little service and I would love to do so much more. There's so much room for improvement. My values have been probably community creating. It's been a value that I've had my whole life. I would just blow my candles every birthday when I was 3, 4, 5, and that would be, it's my one standing wish, just I was like, have the most beautiful communities, friends all over the world, working for this planet. And to this day, it's one of my big wishes. So, and I feel very grateful that I have that. The other value is let go of expectations. There's so many miracles that happen in the things that don't happen,
Yeah.
that you think should happen and don't happen. And actually being um yeah, just being present in the moment. It's has a lot of depth to it that once you start really understanding that, it's again, is that merging that we were talking about, where nothing has a negative connotation, nothing has a positive connotation, everything's a blessing. Just let's just leave some space and just let the flow of things just arrange, herself or itself, and then don't interfere much. So
And I get that around flow and the importance of letting space and flow and some things just naturally. But this idea that you stand for community building, the idea that you stand for being in service, the idea that and you make yourself like there's something wonderful about how you make yourself available. Like you are, how do I say this in a way that you're humbly accessible, and and that's a value, right? I mean, your authenticism doesn't hide behind all. You're out there just connecting with humans and community, and I because I think when you have a company, when you're building something, you have to have some deeply committed values that you stand for.
yeah,
Try to find people like that. Those are the people that you want to hire, that you want to build on. And I think for someone like you who's a mentor to help leaders understand the importance of that and the importance of building community. I mean, that's what you do when you run a company, you build community.
Yeah.
And to have that perspective that you bring, can we transition a little bit to what advice do you have to CEOs, to founders, to leaders about storytelling? I mean, how do you think about it? Like, if I was going to be a great storyteller, if I was going to be a producer of stories in my company, and you were my creative director, what guidance
Yeah.
would you give me?
Well, just think big and think disruptive and just play with many, many ideas. I often think that some companies just stay in this one very tight storyline of what the company is and what they should be. Um, and I think when you're in a writer's room or in a brainstorming room for a script, you really like put so many ideas out and you play with like this rainbow of colors. And I often think a lot of entrepreneurs don't do that. So just like, just soundboard everything, just get feedback, ideas, put it all out, put it all on the wall, and then let it distill, give it time, step away, come back. There's so many ways that things could be communicated in terms of company, what a company does. And I mean, truly, like a lot of the fundraising has to do with like how good is that pitch of that
Yeah,
company, how exciting. Also, is your energy and your values tuned in? Feel that, you know? Sometimes you see a lot of companies getting funding for like the most simple ideas, and you're like, how did that person do that? Like raise, $10 million, $50 million with this idea. Well, I can assure that that person is completely aligned. Their values are completely aligned. And so people feel that, they see that, and they bet on that. So, and I think there's, and again, going back to meditation practice, there's also, there's the expectations and what we want, but also to be open for things to come in a very different way. But when things come to us in a very different way that we were expecting, we have to have that space to see it. Because many times, if we're too like focused on the way we want it, the way, then those opportunities just pass by.
yeah. When we're in
So
the room, we can't see it, right?
we can't see it. So it's just the atonement of the moment. I think it's very important just to, again, going back to meditation, the, you know, there's two things that normally one works on meditation. One is equanimity and the other one is, sensitivity. And just to be acute, to practice sensitivity, just to be aware of what's happening, but also what's happening if you need to change your script, if you need to change your story, if you need to make it more exciting, if if you need to make it bigger, if you need to make your story or your goals bigger, um, I think sometimes people are more comfortable thinking small, So as you know, every entrepreneur is different.
I'm going to take you to the very practical, and then I'm going to take you to a little bit more of a ethereal kind of conversation about this. So you're in my boardroom. I'm the CEO, and I go, Mia,
I'm
you know,
scared, Lord.
onboarding, and I mean, Mia, you have no idea how poorly people onboard people. Like, I mean, people show up to work. We go through all this craziness around recruiting people, and then they show up, and it's like no one was here to greet me. The computer wasn't here, and we don't even do, or we put people in the room and say, read the harassment policy and the procurement policy and the whatever. But we don't. We're still working on really helping people connect to purpose and values as it relates to the value and the strategy of the company. But if you were in the boardroom with me and I said, I want to create the most profound welcome and onboarding experience to my deep purpose as a company and what we stand for, what are some ways that you would help me create something like that? What could that look like? What would be blow your mind kind of? And I'm putting you on the spot. I mean, I don't know. We're just kind of creating this. how would I onboard people in a way that they walked out of there and went, wow, this is what we're about. This is,
I think, and Reasonable does this very well, just asking people what their needs are, where they are in their life, what they want to work on. How can the company actually not just extract, but support them? You
ah,
know,
so
you
this is
know,
a little bit different. It would be not just so much me, just all the story would be pushing out who we are. It's now, and extracting everything out of you, it's more around now as a reflection of who we are in service to you. We're going to engage in this conversation about what you really want out of this and making it. That is a whole nother different
it's
angle.
very different. And it's hard to bring that perspective when we are in a extraction paradigm. I mean, we just talked about this book, which has been my favorite, Hospicing Modernity. It's just, we are in a extractive setup. Our laws are extremely colonialist in absolutely everything, which is like take away. But I think like when you open that door of asking people what is their purpose with this organization, with this company, that's when you do have space for the values to align,
Hmm.
where people are actually going to fight for this companies, like things that a lot of people want. Like I would love, if we need to stay up like until 12 a.m. and work, like I would love my employees to say like, let's do it. People are not going to do that if you're in an extractive paradigm. People are going to do that if you're in a kinship paradigm,
Right,
in a
because if you're
collaboration paradigm.
you're trying to protect yourselves from just being sucked dry and everything. Whereas
Yeah.
your paradigm switches this way around, you're offering and giving because you want to. There's a democratization around what you're doing. Okay, now
Yeah. And also, of course, every person is different, and you have to, you know, I believe like create a team of people that you're working with that are also have like emotional intelligence, not to ask from a company or organization more than what the organization should give them as well. So it's
yeah,
just
there's a
it's just
balance.
finding that balance of, but I think like I feel, and we also, again, going back to Daniel's beautiful program at Unreasonable, just retreat time is so important, retreat time where people take time and are in this very intense days working with each other as a team, as a family, getting to know each other, being vulnerable, understanding, sensitivities, helping each other. That's so crucial. And many times it's just not, it's not the way things work, especially in the global north. I'm an ambassador to the Indigenous Medicine Conservation Fund, and it's an incredible nonprofit, indigenous led, protecting different biospheres of indigenous nations that do have psychotropic medicines in their cultures, in their healing and medicine systems. And when you go to some of these communities, this is the kind of work that they do. I feel like a lot of what, best for what we should be doing, it's actually what indigenous folk have been doing for millennia. And there's so much for us to learn from the way they interact, from like sovereignty, politics sovereignty, territorial sovereignty, community building, community uplifting, healing in community, intergenerational living. There's so many just wonderful things that we could actually learn from that. And at times, these worlds are so separated.
I have had the blessing of hanging out with elders, indigenous elders, and I've brought things like smudge experiences to my MBA programs. And it's like a lot of those people I mean, it's just their first exposure. They just, so there's something there. In that spirit, I have done some informal surveying since you and I met on the bus. Everybody's made a cup of tea, I think. Haven't met, but when I ask about tea ceremonies and about the way of tea, I get a lot of blank stares. So go with me on this.
Okay.
CEO of a company, or I'm the chair of a company, and I've got my executive team together and my board together, and I'm going, it's time for our annual retreat. But we're not going to be, doing walk across coals, and we've done the Tony Robbins thing. I am going to introduce you to Mia Maestro, who's going
Mm.
to take us through a tea ceremony. Now, Describe what that experience is going to be like for us. Because when you started talking about this, my eyes like one bulged up because, probably because I'm a crusty old baby boomer, but this is like, what would that experience be like, Mia? So take us through this,
Oh,
people come walking in to the place of your choice. Take us through a real quick description of what the tea ceremony is going to be like.
well, it's a hard thing to describe because every ceremony is different. You have this Japanese saying, "Ichigo Ichi," one chance, one encounter. That's one of the main foundations of a tea ceremony. Every ceremony is different, but it's so simple. It's so simple in its beauty and it's humbling in its simplicity. It's basically just we sit down and there's a few movements that I would do, just cleaning the bowls and warming the teapot, and then we just sit and have a few bowls of tea in silence, and that's it.
And what the hell? So is it it's the whole experience of it, right? It's the preparation and the way you describe it, the cleaning of it, and plus, tea is not tea. Like I mean, you go to the ends of the earth to find this tea, right? You're not talking about Liptons. You don't disrespect the Liptons, right?
No, well, that's actually very true, Lauren. I'm very grateful that my teacher Wuda has brought me to China many times to do this beautiful learning journeys with the global tea hut community. So the tea that we serve is tea that is seed propagated. That's we call living tea because there's a lot of indigenous groups that tend to these trees. They don't come from plantation shrubs. They're true, beautiful tea forests. So energetically, those leaves are very, very different from, a Lipton or, a little sack full of pesticides that you may soak in like a hot water that it's kind of like a healing, like a
Respect full of
healing hazard, So yeah, so this tea is the tea that has changed humanity. This tea is the tea that had prevented Tibet and China to go to war many centuries. The tea that created the Silk and Tea Road from southern Asia all the way to the highlands of Tibet is a tea that is very ingrained in the creation of the United States. The Boston Tea Party is the tea that actually made the UK expand, with its colonialist tentacles onto India really strongly. So it's the tea that, that a whole new time and, you know, and the 4 p.m. tea o'clock English time was created because you really needed to stop and have a
Stop.
cup of tea. So it's quite special, and a lot happens in those tea ceremonies, and depending what people need. I have a lot of wonderful friends that are writers, and I can, I'm sure they don't mind, like my dear friend Annika Harris and Dan Siegel, who's an incredible writer. They're my neighbors, so they come over for a cup of tea, and then we sit in silence, and then they go back and do their beautiful podcast and writings, and it's very creative. When I do the tea ceremonies in prison, there's a lot of time traveling. People go out and see the world and imagine themselves in the mountains or in the ocean. People that have been incarcerated for 40 years. A lot happens with these leaves. They're really special. And you're required to have the silent time to actually feel the energy of them. And it's not new agey, what I'm saying. We've been having tea for millennia. It's been
Totally.
our oldest form of medicine is just like put some leaves and just add hot water to it. Um, so it's just, and also because tea from Camellia sinensis, tea always has caffeine. What doesn't have what doesn't have caffeine is not tea, is a tisane or an herbal infusion. So this caffeine from these wonderful trees without any pesticides, uh, you know, from trees that, depending the region, some are like as tall as sequoias, some are like beautiful, beautiful, like very healthy trees full of orchids. This caffeine is really helps you to focus. And it's the kind of caffeine that sages and monks and Taoist, priests have been utilizing for really, really, really deep states of meditation. So a
You know
lot
what?
happens. They say like the universe in the teacup. So everyone has their own universe when they sit and when have their tea. And I just hold that space. I don't do much.
If I had, I know this, I've been part of all these public boards and I've been executive, I've been part of all these. If I could offer them a gift from my conversation with you, that they would have that time for that stillness with each other, that they would do it and they would find a way to do it, ideally through a tea ceremony, some way to, they're missing the space. They're missing the stillness. They're missing that room for each other. And I know that may sound a little bit, we're talking about hard-nosed venture capitalists changing the world, business models, EBITDA and all this stuff. But underneath it are this community of human beings we're trying to build to make the world thrive, to bring us all together, solve these problems. And and I love that Daniel Epstein, the unreasonable, made such room for you in this space of conversation. You are a vital part of this conversation. And my gift to all of you entrepreneurs and leaders out there that are in the hard-nosed spreadsheet world is to take a moment to reflect on Mia's wisdom here around the moment we need for our true creativity, our growth, our thriving is the space that we create for each other. And when there's ceremony around it or some sense of history around it, thousands and thousands of years, that even brings a greater richness to it. If you were to think about anything you'd love to, you had a chance to observe all those founders and you're seeing them around. You see all the CEOs of the studios around LA. I lived there too. I interviewed every studio executive one time around where to put the new arena before it was built at Staples Center. What advice might you have for them, or what if you were just give a magic wand to touch them? What would you touch them with?
I think it's the space. I think it's just to leave space, basically. And also just find a practice that is right for them. Could be walking, could be meditating, could be tea, could be swimming. Just find a practice where they find that connectivity. I always find like flow practices are the most intelligent in a way, because the more you practice the flow, then the flow invites, herself
Yep.
in. Yeah, so I would say just find the right flow practice for yourself. The more space we make and the more mindful space we make in our days, the more time we have. Time is a construct.
I don't know if you know how profound this comment that you made is, but it's interesting because a lot of times I'll find when I'm talking to leaders, they're stuck on something. They're really wrestling with something. And this simple little idea about just step out and be in service to someone for a while, just let go. And whatever that is, that could be just calling your mother or going to the food
What,
bank.
depending what kind of mother you have,
Could
if
be,
they really suck you back in.
but this idea of just stepping away and being in service, and then you get lost for a minute in that space that makes you come back and opens up the world in a different kind of way. Look,
It's the observer, like every meditation is just like cultivating that space where you're not within your mind, you're just observing your mind, where you can just have, the distance of actually not being like hostage of your mind. And I think with problem solving within companies, that happens a lot where you just become hostage of the organization, the problems, you just cannot step out. So I know it sounds simple. It's not, it's a simple piece of advice. It's not that simple,
no,
to
no.
cultivate that. But I think I always give this analogy. A lot of people come to me and ask me like what would be my, how come I can start meditating? I'm having so many issues meditating, and I try with this and that and that, and I was like, well, I always say, if you would want to start like taekwondo or kung fu or a martial art, you would go to a teacher, you would study with like a lineage of, the martial art that you really want to cultivate. And there's many. Same thing with meditation techniques. There's so many of them. Um, but you would never just stand in a room in front of a mirror and just do like random, strikes for 15 minutes. And then after a year, you say like, I don't know why this taekwondo is not coming to me. I've been trying, I have my outfit, I got my belt. And with meditation is the same thing, just pick like a really strong lineage, pick a really good teacher, like a real meditation school. There's many out there that they're not. And just cultivate that space, cultivate that moment for yourself. And everyone has time for that. Everyone. The more you meditate, the more time you have in your day. It's true.
That
If you think you don't have 30 minutes to meditate in the morning, meditate for an hour because
I
then you have
remember
a lot more time.
I remember you saying that to me. If you don't think you have 30, meditate for an hour and you're gonna and the way you find time through meditation, like that kind of blew me away. Okay, unfortunately we're gonna kind of go to kind of a wrap here, but I want to I can't thank you enough. But the end with that is you're on your way to Berlin.
I am.
What are you doing? What are you going to do in Berlin? And what are you
Oh,
working on? Like, what can we get excited about watching that you're producing and creating?
well, I'll start with the producing part. I've been working with director Jeff Orlowski, who's wonderful, on a new project. I'm writing and producing with him and also with XGR, which is a documentary production company. And we're working on a very exciting project, and details will be announced
All
in the
right.
months to come. But Jeff, has done The Social Dilemma and Chasing Coral, Chasing Ice. So it's been such an honor and such a joy to be working with him. He's just brilliant, and and has become like a beautiful just friend of mine and part of this community. And then in Berlin, I'm actually premiering a beautiful film that I'm acting in, directed by Lucio Castro. It's called After This Death. We filmed it in Woodstock, New York. And yeah, and we're heading to the Berlin Film Festival, and we're one of the special galas. So we're just excited to celebrate the film and
When
do
is it
a press
released?
conference and see it in this beautiful big, theater that Soul Palace is. So I'm very, very excited and, nervous as well because it's a lot of exposure. I'm the lead character in the film, so I'm in every scene. So it's like I hope people really resonate with this story and with this character.
When is it coming out in North America?
We don't know because that's the beauty of the festivals. You premiere it there, and then people bid for it and fight
Okay.
for the movie
Well, we're fighting for you,
in
and
in a kind way, not in
in a
an
wonderful
extractive
way.
way.
Yeah, in a wonderful way. I can't tell you how fortunate I was to get on that bus with you in the Catskills and how we've had a chance to connect. Thank you for your insight and wisdom and giving us angles to look at that are unique and what we need. And I just love our connection, Mia, and safe travels.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. I hope you just like the fireworks go off in Berlin for you and take care and we'll look forward to catching up with you soon and bye for now.